Hey guys, how's it going? So firstly, I just wanted to say at the start of this video, the reason I'm making it is because the last year and a bit I've been through quite a few issues with my gut, and I've really struggled to find information and videos and just other people's experiences and that sort of thing on what they've been through. So my reasoning for this is to make this video so hopefully it can help someone else. So I've got my piece of paper down here, and this is going to be a long video, so buckle up if you're ready to listen. So I'll start off by saying that about 6 months ago I went vegan. I did it for health reasons, and I just thought I'd give it a go, see how it made me feel, see what I thought about it, and I ended up loving it. So I'm currently still vegan. That's about to change a little bit, but I'll explain why later and it will make sense. So my gut. So I'll start by saying that I've always had gut issues. If someone in our house, ever since I've been here really, if someone farted and it smelled, it was me. It was always me. Or if someone was to get a gastro bug or something, it was me. Or I've always had gut issues, gut pain. Even since when I was born, I had colic, and when I was like 3 and 4, I kept getting constipated. I've always had gut issues, but we've never really thought much of it. It's just been what it has been. So this year I'm on my gap year, and I decided that I really wanted to buckle down and figure out what was going on with my gut, because recently, or the past year and a half, it's gotten really bad, to the point where I was exercising and I was always letting gas off. Sometimes I'd even poo myself. Like, that's how bad it was. And I was like, you know what? I'm not at school this year. I've got to buckle down, I've got to figure out what it is. So I was like, all right, I might try cutting some things out from my diet. So I tried gluten first, and I was like, oh yeah, you know what, maybe I'm just gluten intolerant, because I had really good results from that. My gut felt better, most of my symptoms went away, I wasn't getting as much bloat and pain, that sort of thing. So I was like, cool, that's working. So I went with that for a little while. But then I still wasn't 100%, so I was like, oh, what am I going to do about this? So I had to go to the doctor just to get another prescription for my pill. And I was like, you know what, I might just talk to her about it while I'm there. So I just explained everything. She was like, I reckon you have IBS, which is irritable bowel syndrome. You have all the symptoms, but we'll do a check for Crohn's disease and celiac sensitivity and just all that sort of thing. So anyway, we did the test, and it came back I didn't have anything wrong. So she was like, yep, you know what, you just have IBS. Here's the low FODMAP diet. Look into that. Try cutting stuff out. Just, that'll help you there. And that's as far as she went with it. And that's fine, because that's obviously what she thought was going to be beneficial to me. So I started to cut a few different things out. I didn't follow low FODMAP diet, because if anyone's looked at it, it's ridiculously restrictive. Oh my God, my dog's going off tap. Okay, so I'm pretty sure I was up to talking about the FODMAP diet. So with the FODMAP diet, I looked at it, but it's really like, it's not maintainable at all in any way. So I just started to cut certain things out to see what was affecting me the most. So in the end, I ended up cutting out gluten, dairy or lactose, onion, garlic and buckwheat. I found that those 5 things sort of triggered the bloating, the gas, the diarrhea, the discomfort, just overall discomfort really. So I cut those things out, which, as you can imagine, is quite hard to learn how to cut all that out when you're cooking for yourself at home, but it's so much more difficult when you're eating out. So I cut those things out, and I was like, yeah, cool, you know what, that's basically fine. Like, every now and then I was getting bloated or, you know, bad diarrhea or discomfort, but I just pushed it aside. I was like, you know what, I figured out the 5 things. I'm not bloated every day and looking like I'm 5 months pregnant like I was. It's fine. I'll just deal with it. It'll be fine. So I just let that stay as it was for a little while. And then maybe 3 months ago, I started to get really bad back pain. And it's not like I'd done anything different at the gym to injure myself. But it's just really bad lower back pain. So I went to a physio, and she gave me exercises to do because she believed it was just an imbalance, and she gave me strengthening and that sort of thing. It didn't work, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Like, this is so frustrating, and this is limiting me at the gym. Like, it was so bad to the point where sometimes I couldn't lean down and tie my shoelaces up because it was just so painful. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna have to do something about this now. My brother had something wrong with his hip, and same thing, a physio didn't fix it. They're obviously treating it as to what they think it is, and that's fine. But they didn't fix that, and I went to an osteopath and he picked up on it straight away. So I was like, you know what, I'll go chat to the same guy and see what he has to say. So he looked at everything, we did x-rays and that sort of thing to make sure it was nothing skeletal or muscular, and it wasn't really. So we're trying to figure out what it was, and an osteopath sort of looks at everything in like a holistic way. They have a holistic approach, and they believe that everything in the body is interlinked. So he asked me not just questions about my back and that sort of thing, but he also asked me about my diet, just about everything else. So I explained how I had cut out all these things out of my diet, and it was basically better, not fully, but you know, it was better. And he ended up he's really quite gentle, and like he feels your back, feels your body, just sort of gets a feel for how everything is. And he actually asked me, he was like, you know, how's your gut health at the moment? How's it feeling? And I was like, look, I've got it cut down. I think I've got everything. It's still a little bit uncomfortable. Like when you're pressing on it, it's uncomfortable, but whatever, it's fine. And he was like, because I can actually feel how tight it is. So he ended up doing a technique on me called visceral technique, which is massaging out of the organs. So he massaged all my intestine and my gut and that sort of thing for the hour I was there. And I actually found that my back pain started to disappear a little bit. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So his theory is that the gut and intestines can put pressure on the back if it's all not in whack and that sort of thing. Anyway, but and with the x-rays that came back, there was sort of like this white part of my x-rays, and I was like, I don't know what it is, I don't know how to read an x-ray. But he said it's interesting because all that white stuff on the x-ray, that's actually all gas. There was gas pockets all the way around my x-ray of my whole back, and that was just gas pockets all through my intestine. So it was just evidence that, you know, there was gas trapped in there, that something still wasn't right. So he suggested that I go and talk to someone about my gut, and I was like, okay, should probably deal with that. Before I move on, I also mentioned that I talked to him as I stopped the pill. It was 4 months ago now, so it was potentially 2 months. When I was seeing him, it was 2 months before I'd stopped the pill. I didn't want to be putting anything artificial like that into my body anymore. And to that point, I hadn't got my period back. And I've never ever had a regular period. Even when I first got it, it was here, there and everywhere, and I ended up having it so much that I was almost anemic, which is why I had to go on the pill in the first place. So that's never been regular at all. And I mentioned that to him as well, and he said that your uterus and that sort of thing, if something's wrong down there and your hormones aren't right, that can also link to back pain. So I was like, cool. So I went and saw a Chinese doctor that he referred me to just for acupuncture and herbs and that sort of thing, which I've stopped now. I'll explain that later as well. So yes, so he believed that my back pain was predominantly from gas that was built up due to diet or gut problems. So this is where I went and saw a lady at a clinic who had actually been referred to, but who had been referred to by a friend who's had gut issues. And I'd considered it before I was having back pain, but I was like, you know what, I think it's sort of manageable. It's not super limiting anymore. It's a little bit painful, but I can deal with it. But when he told me I should probably go look into it, I went and saw this lady. And in my first appointment, I got there and she asked me a heap of questions. She asked me about so many things in my life between the age of like 0 and 18, and then from 18 till now, which is like a year. Basically, she's asked me a lot of questions as to what's happened in my life. So I was born really premature. I was born on the 10th of December and I was meant to be born on the 22nd of February. So I was quite early. And she asked me questions about my gut. She was like, did you ever have gut issues as a kid? And I was like, yes, I had colic when I was a baby. I was always constipated. I just explained the whole lot to her. So we started to join some dots. And she was like, I told her about my food intolerances, obviously, and that sort of thing, because I believe they're intolerances. And she said, look, I believe that you have a E. coli deficiency, which is a bacteria in the gut. She believed that my gut was imbalanced and that it has been since I was born, because I was born so premature and my gut wasn't fully developed then. And I've also been on antibiotics and that sort of thing when I was younger, when I was sick, and I was on antibiotics as soon as I was born and that sort of thing. So she was like, we're gonna get you to do a test and then we'll come back reset and we'll figure out what you have to do there. So I did this test. I got it sent to me from Melbourne. I had to send a poo sample back to them. They fermented it for 4 weeks just so they could look at the bacteria that was going, and they sent the results to her and she called up and talked to them about it. So I went back the other day to get my results, and what she had suspected was true. I had a, some people down there staring. So basically I went back and she had the results, and what's happened is I have an imbalance of bacteria in my gut. And the reason for this being is because I was born really premature, because I was put on antibiotics straight away, because because my gut had never had a chance to become what it really needed to be in regards to balance of bacteria. So the results came back, and it has like different percentages of what types of bacteria are meant to have in that range. So she suspected I have an E. coli deficiency, and I do. So my percentage of E. coli was 48.15, and it's meant to be between 70 and 80%. I had a low level of bacteroids. I had 63.36, and you're meant to have between 90 and 95%. I didn't have any, I'm not very good with these words, bifidobacterium. I had 0%, and you're meant to have 5 to 11%. And I had way too much of streptococcus, or I think it's streptococcus. Let's just call it strep. I had way too much of that. So I had 50.79%, and I'm meant to have under 5%. So that basically shows that, what she suspected was true. I had a really bad imbalance in my gut bacteria. And what I've come to learn is that the gut is really important for everything. She suspected that I have never had a regular period and that my hormones have never been sort of normal is because of my gut. Because when you eat food, it goes to your gut, and then the bacteria and everything breaks down, and it'll go, okay, we need to make this enzyme, we need to send this message to the brain, la la la. It basically controls everything. So she suspected that my pituitary gland wasn't getting the message to my ovaries and that sort of thing to help me have a period and make me regular and that sort of thing. So that makes sense there. So with those results, I am not actually intolerant to all those foods that I thought I was. It's just that because of being born so pregnant, all those issues, it's just the bacteria has just kept becoming more imbalanced to the point where I kept getting more issues and that sort of thing. So yes, they were my results. So she also did blood work for hormones and that sort of thing, and they're a little bit unbalanced because of that. Now she also looked at something called an anion gap. I don't know the chemistry and all that sort of thing as behind it, but basically you have your positive and your negative ions in your body, and the closer they are together, the lower the anion gap, and the further apart, the higher your anion gap. And anion gap can be used to measure the acidity in your body. So sodium, potassium, if they're out of whack, your anion gap's going to be larger, that sort of thing. Basically, my anion gap was way out of the range of what it's meant to be, which means that my body's really, really acidic. She said that I've got the most acidic body that she's ever seen. And the reason for this being is because of the strep bacteria that I have in my gut. I have that 50.79% instead of under 5. That type of bacteria, its job is to break down glucose. And glucose is what all carbohydrates are broken down into, which is eating a vegan diet is predominantly what I eat and what most humans eat. We eat mainly carbohydrates. So that type of bacteria was absolutely thriving in my gut. And when that bacteria breaks down the glucose, as a byproduct, it produces lactic acid. So that's why my body's so acidic, is because I have so much of this type of bacteria. It's breaking down glucose all the time, and as a byproduct it's producing lactic acid, which builds up in my system and I can't get rid of it. Yes, so that's that. And because of my gut issues and the imbalance in bacteria that I've had all through my life, I've also developed leaky gut syndrome. So we're going to try treat that as well. Now, the treatment for this is I have to start on a 4-week really, really strict diet. Part 1 of this, it's all sort of in the 4 weeks, but it's sort of separated into part 1 and 2. Part 1 of this is healing my gut and the gut wall to stop the leaky gut syndrome and stop all the nutrients, escaping and that sort of thing, through having zinc supplements, glutamine supplements, and vitamin B supplements. So this should all strengthen my gut and get rid of that leaky gut syndrome, which is an issue. The other way I'm going to be doing this is I'm going to have to introduce some meat, such as bone broths, so that, because the marrow and that sort of thing is really good for healing your gut, as well. So I have to have meat only once a day for these 4 weeks. It has to be in one meal. If I have a plate, it can be 80% vegetables, 20% meat. So it's not going to be that bad. Look, I'm not super happy about it, but if it's just for the short term and I'm going to be able to eat normally again for the long term, I think it's definitely worth it. So yeah, that part 1 is the gut healing through the supplements and that sort of thing. Part 2 is trying just to balance those the gut bacteria out and to get them back to the levels that they're meant to be. And it's going to be a long process. Like, it's taken 19 years of my life to get it to the point of how bad it is. So it's not going to be fixed in a day. It's going to take a while. So to do this balancing of the bacteria, I have certain antibiotics to take which will stop the growth of the strep, and it will also help the other bacteria to grow, as well as probiotics, which will help the bacteria that I want to grow flourish. So also, as part of this part 2, I have to go on that really strict diet to balance out the bacteria. So to do this, an easy way to explain it is you have your simple carbohydrates and your complex carbohydrates. So the simple carbs, when you eat them, they're broken down in your gut into glucose and absorbed into your bloodstream to be used for energy and all that sort of thing. Complex carbs are broken down into maltose, and then it goes into the small intestine where there's enzymes, and those enzymes break down the maltose into glucose, which is then absorbed into the bloodstream. So part 1 of my diet is cutting out all simple carbohydrates, because all the simple carbohydrates are turned into glucose in the gut, which is what I want to avoid. So I'm trying to kill off that strep bacteria by cutting out simple carbohydrates, because then there's no fuel for that to eat and keep thriving, and hopefully it will die off a little bit. So the diet also has to be, it's very restrictive. I have certain vegetables I can have. I can't really have really any fruit. There's like a few, I can have apricots, I think, and a few other things. I've got it all written down because they're all high in fructose, which is turned into glucose in the gut as well, because it's a simple carbohydrate. So I've got some few vegetables I can eat. I can eat not much fruit. I can eat some selected nuts, seeds and legumes. I can eat healthy fats and oils. I have to eat a small amount of red meat for the to heal my gut, and that's vitamin K comes from red meat as well, which I need to heal my gut. And I can't eat any processed foods, and I can't eat any grains or that sort of thing. So basically it's cutting out all the simple carbohydrates and just focusing on complex carbohydrates. So that's the plan for the first 4 weeks, and then we're going to reassess and see if I'm getting any results from that. And yeah, basically that's what's going to happen there. I think I've sort of covered everything. I might watch over this again, and then if there's anything that I haven't touched on, I'll just add it to the end here. So yeah, thanks for watching if you've made it this far. It's been quite a while. So thank you for watching. I hope that this reaches someone out there that that is looking for not an answer, but just someone who's been through the same thing. So yeah, thanks guys. One last thing is that I think that if I get a chance when I start this diet on the 1st of January or 2nd January, whenever I start it for that month, I'm going to film all the sort of food that I'll be having and that sort of thing, just for people who are interested, and also to help people if they have to go through a similar thing. Pretty confident that's the last thing, so thanks for watching guys. See ya.